Peter, I hope you don't get mad at me, but for most of my life, I've really been interested in whether God exists or not. Do you see many fallacies that people use in order to prove or demonstrate the existence of God?
Well, they must all be fallacious because there is no God. It's whether you can detect the fallacy easily enough. I suppose a scientist would think of a first cause as a very powerful argument for the existence of God. Where did it all come from? Who started it off? Terribly difficult question. But I think that any question that is given the answer, well, God must have done it, is an abnegation of the intellect. It really is, it sounds as though it's a positive statement, but in fact, it's a camouflage of ignorance. And so it means that people have stopped thinking. And if you are confronted with the question of a first cause, where the universe comes from, don't just slip onto the feather bed of saying God did it, because that's meaningless, totally, utterly meaningless. What scientists have got to do is to trace causes back to their origin and find a mathematical theory of the emergence of the universe. I hope that that will prove possible. There is no evidence yet that it will not prove possible. And any scientist who says that it is impossible to account for the emergence of the universe from nothing without intervention is not being a real scientist, is just too pessimistic.
If we look back historically, we certainly see science moving ever forward and religion, in terms of the explanatory areas that they deal with, retreating.
Yeah.
And perhaps religion is in some corner now, but they're staking out a very strong position. But let's look at the historical flow. And we have what is called God of the gaps, that every time something is not understood.
Yeah, it's an abnegation of the intellect.
And we've seen it occur in many different stages.
Yeah, every time it occurs, it's abnegation of the intellect. So take that God of the gap, take it out of your sentence and say abnegation of the intellect. That's what it is. It's people giving up trying to think and using a kind of a spell. You've got to get from point A to point B in an argument. You've got a gap. So you weave a spell, you cast a spell, and you're there. and you call it God. You don't call it a spell. I don't see any part of the natural world that requires the invocation of the spell we call God.
Why do these issues provoke such emotion?
People are terrified, aren't they? But I don't think people should have fear about what is being discovered. I mean, maybe people should be terrified of the thought that there is no afterlife, but they should come to terms with it and, enjoy the pre-afterlife rather than waiting for the non-existent afterlife.
So as we look at people who put forth arguments for God, what is the appropriate response?
Go to your psychiatrist, I think. I think it's deeply interesting that you've got these very clever people, scientists, some of them, eminent scientists, who, even in this day and age, still believe in God. And it's quite extraordinary to me that that scientists, with the current level of understanding of the power of explanation and understanding and comprehension that science provides, that there are still people out there who think that there must be this sort of supernatural thing going on. I think they have to go to psychiatrists, really. It must be their upbringing which has given them some deep insecurity, and especially as I see not one iota of evidence in favour of it, except sentiment.